Ravens Fall by Claire Casey. Chapter 14. Excerpt. Riding hard, Paris spotted the town they were heading for. They'd heard rumours that the rebels had been seen hiding there, waiting for another opportunity to strike and continue their reign of terror. This was the closest they'd come to crossing paths with the rebels. It was an opportunity that could not be lost. The town was a few miles ahead. Even from this distance, it still dominated the surrounding area as it perched on top of a rocky ridge. Even from this distance, it was obvious that there was one road that led into the town and the same road led back out. From its perch on top of the ridge, those who lived within the town's walls would have commanding views of everything that surrounded them. There was no way to get to and from the town without being seen. It was a perfect location for anyone who wanted to be able to watch the comings and goings of others, all while remaining relatively safe. And yet, the surrounding countryside was quiet, with there barely being any sign of life. That was enough to put Paris on guard. It had been a long ride for her and those under her command, but they would cover the distance soon enough. Since they had left Freewell, their quarry had proven elusive. The rebels had been cutting a swathe through the countryside, always disappearing before they could be brought to heel. They melted into the forests and the woodlands as if they'd never been there. Whenever she set her spies out to find out what they could, they never came back with anything more than the odd peasant. She had her ways of making them talk, but they never told her what she wanted to hear. They would talk of others who were wearing the colours of the Aryan army, who were terrorising all who crossed their path. It was these false soldiers that the peasants feared, not the rebels. Struggling to understand what she was being told, Paris focused on the task that Kern had set them to complete. Phantom soldiers with a bloodlust could be dealt with later, and with more soldiers than she had with her. They hadn't come across any peasants in a couple of days. The countryside was empty and quiet, as if the world had emptied of all other life. As they rode closer to the town, Paris frowned, as she saw that the palisade walls had been blackened by fire, and the smell of smoke hung in the air. "Something doesn't feel right," Paris said to the soldier at her side, as they got closer to the base of the ridge. "In what way, ma'am?" "Can't you smell that smoke?" Paris asked him. "As if there's been a large fire." "There are some farmhouses nearby," he replied. "I'm sure it must be just the smell of the smoke from their fires. Maybe someone's had a bonfire and has been burning whatever they can get their hands on." "And what of the burn marks on the palisade?" Paris questioned. "The gods only know, ma'am." Looking back up at the town, she couldn't see any signs of there being any patrols on top of the palisade. A silence hung in the air, which sent a shiver down her spine. Fearing that they were too late, her thoughts raced as she spurred herself and her men on towards the town. They hadn't heard of any attack. If there had been, she was sure that word would have gotten to them. And yet, something wasn't as it should be. As they made their way up the hill, the smell of burnt meat mingled with the wood smoke, as the sight of what was left of the town came into view. Reining on her horse, Paris stared at what was in front of her, her eyes cold and hard. Pushing on, she knew that her soldiers followed close behind. As she stopped at the palisade gates, with her soldiers at her back, Paris stared at the destruction that lay before them.